Hey everybody, welcome back to the Field Notes podcast. My name is Kate and I'll be hosting today with my husband Zach and our friend Marcus here. And today we're going to actually look a little closer at different aspects of Christian community and how you can help build up a healthier, stronger community around you, and even noticing good and bad things. And so we're actually going to start off today with a little bit of a game. We're going to do some red flags and green flags for community based on personal experience. And so Marcus, what is one green flag for you when you're looking at a community?
Great question. My first green flag would be a culture of joy that's within the community. And I think it reveals that you're living in a healthy community when people are walking in joy, you know, that people are free. In a church context, if you have leaders that are joyful, you just want to be around them. And so I think it's
That's good.
It's contagious.
Contagious for sure.
That's good.
Let's get a red flag from you.
Community where everyone kind of is just a reproduction of each other. And that's a red flag for me. My green flag would be diversity. And that can be cultural diversity, but also just diverse personality, diverse preferences that are together in community. If that isn't there, I am suspicious, personally.
All right, you landed on a green. I'm going to go for a red then. One of my red flags is... My mind just went blank. Okay,
Come on,
what
Kate.
was my red flags?
Hold on a second, too. So, never mind, I just saw the time where it's counting up. It's recording, but I don't see a time.
Also here with us, but unseen, is our good friend Ben manning the cameras. And so, thank you, Ben.
Yes.
Ever faithful.
Yes. So you were talking about green flags, and your brain went blank.
I was actually going to give an example of a red flag because
gotcha.
you just gave a green. One of my red flags is when there's an overemphasis in the community on we are family. And whether or not you're feeling that relationship or not, or you're feeling that vulnerability, if there's that overemphasis of we are a family, to me that's nope.
It's it's so where it's in word but not in practice.
Yes.
Yes.
Good.
Go green.
Go green. Another green one would be a community that eats together, fellowships together.
Come on.
I think one that,
That's 100%, bro.
you can be a part of a big group, but you never really know each other's hearts. And I think when you actually eat together, sit down at a table, that it takes down these walls and you feel safe, you feel secure. You share things in your heart that you wouldn't maybe just in a more formal setting. And so I think sharing food around the table is really,
honestly, that was
really
one of my
good.
green flags too.
Come on.
It's if there's
good.
food, I'm there.
Yes.
So another red for me would be, I think if there is a obviously unhealthy expectation on the leader or leaders of a community, where they're elevated to a place of almost celebrity status. And that doesn't have to be Joel Osteen. It could literally be a pastor of a 150 people church, but that dynamic can still exist.
They're exalted.
Yes. I feel like that's just a setup for failure as far as broken expectations. And even if it's a really good leader, I don't want as a community for us to be able to coast on just someone's success or someone's charisma. I want us to go through things together. And then another green flag was a community that has fun together, that does things, that's
So good.
that works hard together. So it's not just, we're going to do something and two people show up. So a community that is all in, helps one another doing things, and then also has fun, shows up, cheers each other on, and also just enjoys each other's company.
I think one red flag for me is a community that's super critical. And especially if, say, you, Zach, and I were talking, and I maybe being really critical of other people behind their back, then for you can't really trust that I'll
not do the same.
Not do the same. Yeah, another time for you.
I'm gonna be like, ooh, check that box. Don't be vulnerable with
For
Marcus.
sure. Yeah. And in your head, you've already been like, I can't trust Marcus with the things going on, the wrestles in my own heart. And so it's just hard to trust those kind of people. And then another one would be a controlling community that you're a part of.
Yeah.
Where there's just like this micromanagement, maybe always looking over your shoulder. There's just like a lack of joy in that.
Lack of trust.
Lack of trust, and a lack of like you bringing your giftings to the table and just being yourself.
Yeah.
And I think also a red flag is like if you have somebody telling you, Zach or Kate, like you should do this or you should do that. I think when we hear the word should, our antenna should be up. That could be a red flag. And could be controlling.
It's one thing for a friend to encourage me, but it's another thing when it's in order for you to be in this community, you need to do this, you should do this, you should do this. That's a good point. A big red flag. Yeah.
So a green flag for me would actually be like, because I'm a mom, like a community that like enjoys children.
Yeah.
Like kids are messy, kids can be loud, but kids are also really fun. And so a community that like embraces all of that and is like, you know what, it's okay if the kids are kind of loud or make a mess, like we're just gonna let it happen.
Does that take the pressure off of you as a mom, knowing that you're in a community that
I can be more at ease. Yeah, if I'm not constantly like shh, or like trying to contain them or their mess. That's really such a weight off my shoulders. And my last red flag, I'm sorry, this is not a like biblical anything. This is personal preference alone. And I'm probably the minority here, but a red flag for me is communities that want to do everything late at night. And like, that's just entirely me. I don't like late night crowd.
Yeah.
Just because I get tired. I like to go to bed early. And so for me, that is a personal red flag.
Late night McDonald's runs.
I could get more.
Yeah, you could get on board. That's why I said this is definitely just me on this one. But like talking about communities and our red flags and our green flags, things we like and don't like and want to be around or don't want to be around, kind of just brings to mind that like in our Western culture, we have a lot of freedom to choose.
Yeah.
Just who we're surrounding ourselves with.
100%.
If we want to church hop, we can church hop. If we just want to be in a different friend group, like there's other options. There's other people you can go be around. But like not everybody has that privilege, if I can call it, communities of believers that are in nations that are predominantly Hindu or Muslim, where it's just the number of Christians are small.
Right.
The community of believers you can surround yourself with is limited.
There isn't the luxury of a bunch of Christian communities that you can pick and choose from.
Right. Our personal experience with that would be we moved overseas to the Middle East and we were living there with a small community of Christian believers.
Right.
And you know, it's not always the friends you would have chosen.
I would say over half of the people I wouldn't have naturally chosen as friends.
Not naturally gravitated towards.
No. Like as far as like, you know, naturally just kind of vibe with. I would have never gotten close to those people, but for being forced to be in a small community where it was just kind of like, it's just you fellers, man. It's like there ain't no one else.
We did have something that was helpful to us that we implemented into our schedule. Like everybody just kind of made it work. That really helped us grow together. And it was based out of this verse. Do you want to read it for us, Zach? Yeah. This is Acts 2:42.
Yeah.
This was something that really like helped give us vision for coming closer together and also just a couple like practical ways that we could do that.
Right. And they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and the prayers. And I'm actually going to read a little more. And awe came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were being done to the apostles. And all who believed were together and had all things in common. And they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all, as any had need.
So kind of using that verse as our model, or just like a direction to go. First thing was the apostles' teaching, or like the word. We would get together and we would go through the scriptures together.
Yeah.
Once
So
a week.
good.
And like maybe we didn't get through a huge chunk.
How long did it take us to get through John?
Oh gosh, we read the book of John for a year and a half.
Yes.
Wow.
And it was good.
Milked it.
It was
Got all the
good, but when
sweetness out
we
of it.
finished, I was like, we did it. It was like a big accomplishment. But, it was like not a formal, someone is the teacher, but it was like us, verse by verse. What do you think about this? What is the Lord telling you about this? What do you see us learning about the Lord or about Jesus from this? And it was like really good. It made room for everybody to speak up.
Yeah.
The second thing we did was fellowship, and that was just having a good time together, like asking each other, making space to be like, hey, like, how was your week? And like letting everybody share, not just the loudest person in the room that's like, oh my gosh, you guys have to hear what happened on Tuesday.
Right.
But like even the quieter people being like, hey, this is like your moment, you can share. If you wanted to be brief, you could be brief.
Right.
But like over time, as we kept doing that, we saw people did feel free to be vulnerable and like, actually this week really sucked and this is why. Which, then gave opportunity to pray for one another
100%.
and just like encourage each other in those moments where it was like a hard time.
We were doing life together and we were loving one another, even though we didn't all naturally
Bond right off the hop.
rap that, or even easily get along. We would rub each other different ways because of just different personalities that typically maybe don't really want to get close to each other.
Yeah, this was not like the kumbaya circle.
No.
Like,
Yeah.
It wasn't easy necessarily,
yeah.
but by making space for it and valuing it, the payoff was huge.
It was also valuable seeing and hearing different perspectives
Yeah.
Yeah.
of just people from different walks of life who were coming together.
Different political backgrounds,
Totally.
different cultures,
Wow.
people that I naturally would not surround myself with.
Yeah. Just getting to hear them process what it was like to be a missionary in the Middle East and sharing the gospel with Muslims.
On a weekly basis, you
Yep.
know, just as they were working through the difficulties of that and the challenges.
Because it's not a cookie cutter.
Yeah.
The third thing then was the breaking of bread,
Right.
which
Jumped
was
the gun
always
on
a
that.
favorite part.
Yes.
Everybody loves to eat,
Yeah.
take turns making food, or everybody brings something, or even just, I brought my leftovers from last night. What do you have? But eating it together
Right.
brings people together.
Yeah.
There's-
Now, would that include, did you do communion together as well?
We would do
With that?
it's sometimes, not like every week, but we would include that time
Cool.
to time.
But I think it really is like communion is like made for the body.
It
Like,
is.
We are
That's
like
true. 100%.
declaring this blood and the bread, like we're declaring our oneness in Jesus. And I
Right.
think it's so good to do.
This might be a slight tangent. Yeah, I got the eyebrow, but maybe just for a few seconds. When we break bread and we drink, like the grape juice or wine or whatever, we are reconnecting ourselves with the reality of Christ and of His sacrifice and of His love,
Yeah.
and of His character.
Mm-hmm.
But in the same sense, in like we do it in the context of as a fellowship, and like looking back in the church history, the act of communion was also just part of just them eating together. It wasn't just them sitting in a bunch of rows watching someone talk and then maybe singing a few songs. It was face to face across a table.
Wow. Wow, that's intimate.
And so as far
Yeah.
as like the level of connection, they didn't have like these big huge rooms. It was these homes
Wow.
that they were face to face in the breaking of bread and in the fellowshipping.
And it almost kind of is a good step into the last part of that verse, which is praying together. It's like it's not just the fellowship and it's not just the sitting across from each other, but like bringing that element of prayer whether you are praying together for something. In our case, it was for salvation for people, or if you're praying for one another for like personal stuff, different things. Like, prayer is vulnerable. And so when you pray out loud, like, you are privy to a conversation between that person and God.
You see what's in their hearts.
Totally.
What they're thinking about.
It's
processing
vulnerable.
all the time.
Yeah, which is why people can be intimidated to pray out loud even sometimes, is they feel that vulnerability.
And if you're just going to a prayer meeting and that's your only context for knowing people there, your prayers probably aren't going to be that vulnerable because there's no trust. Just praying together doesn't mean there's going to be natural vulnerability, but like doing life together and then praying in that context, that's when that's when, like, I feel like you go somewhere together in prayer.
When you do it over time with the same people, it just builds your relationship.
Yeah.
So far, like, everything we've been talking about has been, you know, what you and others can do to build community. But it's also, we really want to point out, like, what you can do to affect change in your community, because I can't be in control of what you want to do, and I can suggest things, but at the end of the day, what I can control is my own mindset, and that can have a big effect in the long run on your community. We're all people and we can get hurt, and choosing forgiveness sometimes again and again and again, that really forges something in you, that it gives you a depth of character. And so it's not just like, oh yeah, I forgave you, you're off the hook, Marcus, but it's also like true forgiveness, like that is going to do something in me.
And if you're in community, you're bound to come across offense and the opportunity to forgive.
Absolutely. There's going to be plenty of opportunities to forgive. But you brought up a good point when we were talking about it before, the parable of the prodigal son.
Yes.
Do you want to talk a little bit about how you can choose that mindset?
Yeah, and I think this plays really well into community and building relationships, because in the parable of the prodigal son, we see the older son being very critical and fault-finding of the younger son and then of his father, and seeing the faults, you know, the things that were wrong in the situation, in the place, with the father, with the son. But then there's the father's perspective, where he looks and sees the best in both of his boys. And he knows, even with the younger son who comes back home so dirty and like has wasted all of his inheritance, or the inheritance that was given to him, the father still sees the best in him and brings him to, honors him. I think that's another green flag, is if there's honor in a community. The father honored this younger son immediately and restored him. And I think for us, it's just like it's such a good truth to look at as we talk about community, to have this father mindset rather than an older brother mindset that's always looking to the faults.
So just to be clear, you're not saying that you have to take on a fatherly role in the community.
Right. No, not at all.
But just that mindset of choosing to see the best and choosing to not lock somebody into their current state.
Basically, speaking identity over them. Like, like obviously being aware and discerning and knowing they're not perfect, but also it kind of tees off into the parable of the ruler that had that man come before him and begged him to have his debt covered, that he could not possibly pay back. And then the ruler forgave his debt, and that same man on his way back home saw a man that owed him like pennies compared to what he himself owed, and he grabbed him by the throat and threatened to put him in prison if he didn't pay up. Do we have an overcoming sense of God's like voice over us, of identity and grace? If we're not going to give it to each other.
Agreed.
And
agreed.
I think a healthy community is a community of grace. There's still accountability. There's still being called higher, But what does love do? Love covers a multitude of offenses.
Yeah.
That's true. And that's like when you start to shift into the mindset almost of the older brother that is looking at flaws, that it's criticizing. And do you know anyone that you're overly affectionate of that just sits and reminds you of all of your faults and tears you down all the time?
I don't want to be around them.
No.
Yeah.
No, but the people that are speaking life and affirming in your life, like those are the people that you want to be around, and that, you know, they can call you higher.
Yeah.
And can actually help you draw closer to the Lord in it.
Yeah.
Do you want to share your experience growing up?
Yeah.
Being around people that were affirming you and calling you higher and speaking identity in your life.
Yeah, totally. The family that I grew up in really practiced words of affirmation. And I think that's so huge in community to, like you said, Zach, like speak identity over people and what you see in them. It's so life-giving. Yeah. And I remember for like all of our birthdays, usually after the meal, we'll have a time of like speaking words of affirmation or prophetic words over the individual. And for me, one of my love languages is words. And so it blesses me so much. Sometimes we'll get out our phone and record it so we can listen to it later. But it just it's so life-giving when you hear people speak of things that they see in you.
They're literally calling those things out and saying that is something that is valuable, that is there's worth to that.
I think so often we can think of ourselves like, what am I not good at? What do I not have?
Exactly.
Fall into that
100%.
That fall into comparison with others, and it can just rob us of all joy and of really seeing who we have to be reminded. I think being in community, you keep from getting so inwardly focused and from really beating yourself up, and where you're able to know the value that you have in Jesus.
Yeah.
And so that was huge for me. I think just words of affirmation. I learned that from my dad. Also learned from my family, just asking lots of questions. I think that's a good practical, is just be somebody that's super inquisitive. Ask lots of questions to those that you're surrounded by. Don't be the one that talks their ear off. No one wants that. Be a good listener. Ask the questions. And then another thing is just I know for me, when I worked at a retail store, there was a number of East Indian immigrants that work there, and my heart was just drawn towards them. I think the Lord's just given me a heart for people of different cultures, and so I was drawn towards them, and would go out for lunch with them, or maybe they would invite me over to their house, because usually people of other cultures are very hospitable and open their homes to me.
Well, they invited you in because they saw that you wanted to get to know them.
Yeah.
And you had chosen, consciously or maybe even unconsciously, that you were going to be a friend to them, and that you wanted to build a relationship with them, and they could feel that. And so they're like, oh, yeah, okay, come on over, Marcus.
Yeah.
And they, reciprocated that. Totally. Whereas if you had been closed off and judged them for whatever reason.
There's things of other cultures that rub me raw.
Yeah.
And things that get on my nerves.
Always.
100%.
Yeah.
But then to not see the things that rub you raw, but the things that you can connect on and appreciate about their culture, to rejoice in those things and delight in those things.
It's not as if you are looking at everything through rose-colored glasses.
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
And I think if you truly get to know people that are different than you, there are going to be things that annoy you.
Yeah.
Back to choosing forgiveness.
It's choosing forgiveness, choosing grace, and it's grace. I think grace and acceptance doesn't have to mean I agree with everything that you are.
Totally.
But it's I love you and I want to get to know you, even if there are things that I disagree with, maybe even strongly. That's not going to define whether I accept you into my life or not.
Yeah, or withhold love from you.
Exactly.
That was your red flag, was a community where everybody is the same, as you surround yourself with people you can look in the mirror and recognize. I'm glad you called it.
Yeah.
That's
If
real.
everybody looks the same, warning, you may be in a cult.
Run. Which actually would be a good point talking about when to leave. Because we don't want to be trigger happy with the eject button.
So how do you know though? Like, what do you guys think? What are like the things that lead you, that help you, like guide you through that kind of decision?
Okay.
You know, I think I wouldn't want to make that kind of decision apart from the Lord.
Yes.
Like, I think it would need to be a very prayerful decision on your point to, like, be talking to the Lord about where you're at and where you're seeing this community. And if you start to see some actions that are, like, non-biblical, really taking that to the Lord and kind of putting it before him, like, hey, I want to love these people.
Yes.
Like, I want to help them if times are hard. I want to, you know, stick by a brother. I want to forgive if it calls for forgiveness. I want to forgive again if it calls for forgiveness again.
What if?
But knowing when it is an unhealthy community and when to remove yourself.
Yeah, and I think too, wouldn't you say, just to like, to not figure it out on your own.
Yeah.
In your own headspace, try and figure it out, but actually bring like wise counsel.
Wise counsel.
Absolutely.
Outside of the situation.
Right.
Because I think of like people like maybe right now, like that are in a situation where like they've been made aware of certain things that are very wrong and harmful in their community and leadership. And if you're in that situation, like go to God, but also pull in wise counsel that are outside of your community, that can bring in wisdom and perspective without all of the heated emotions and maybe different politics of your situation.
Right, because you can get real caught up right here. And if we're both in the situation and we're discussing it, then we're both
It's just
caught.
a feedback loop. It's not really going anywhere. It's just, escalating all the things we're already feeling.
So outside counsel.
Yeah, that's
actually.
good.
I'm not sure how I want to say this because it's a little out of order, but I want to talk about honoring different parts of the body and like people with different skill sets than yours. And like it is valuable in your community to have people with different skill sets. If everybody's a hand, then what you guys can do like for the Lord and like even just with each other, like, is limited because you're all hands.
Yeah.
And so if you've got a hand and an eye and a foot and an ear, then, there are more gifts and talents that the Lord has given that are able to work together.
Right.
Would you care to comment on that?
When I moved to the Middle East to work in ministry, it was these people that, whether my team leader or teammates, little community, they're like, Trace, why don't you start playing the guitar more? You can do it. You have it. You have what it takes. Like, you're actually good. Like, encouragement that came against my own headspace of insecurity. It was just this group of people that were different and had different strengths. But what made the difference was that they looked outside of their own individual callings and preferences and encouraged those next to each other.
Wouldn't you say it's like detrimental if all of us were to act like you, Zach? Because you need me. You don't need another Zach.
I need people that are different and that have strengths where I don't have strengths.
We need each other, and we need you to just be free, be yourself. That's what we really need.
Yeah.
Like in God, who you are in God, like we need that. And I think it's very detrimental and harmful if we're all just trying to behave the same way.
Yeah.
Totally.
We can't do that. Yeah.
So what this is all culminating to for me is, what are the lenses that you're putting on? What are the glasses that you're going to see through? Like choosing that healthy mindset, that father mindset of I'm going to see the best in people.
I'm going to call out their identity, call out their giftings.
Yeah. And so like almost like asking yourself, like, how have I been viewing people lately? If I am not happy with the community around me and the friends I've surrounded myself with, like, okay, what position have I taken on this?
If you right now are praying for God to send you or to put you in a community, he's going to do it, but also be aware that it will also be hard.
Yeah.
Because he's going to put you around people that will also stretch you, that will also actually like make it so that you'll have to lean into God's grace in order to love them.
Yeah. Be open,
and that's
for
okay.
Him to do it through you.
Yeah, be open for God to answer your prayer for a healthy community through you.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Like, be open to that. So,
Yeah. I think, yeah. Maybe you're praying for something like, God, I really want this type of community.
Yeah.
But it's like, maybe first ask the Lord, like, how can I invest myself and love this community the best I can?
Yeah.
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 Absolutely. That is a great way to come at it. Marcus, would you be willing to pray for us just as we wrap up this episode, just for all of us to kind of be able to maybe shift our thinking and be able to like walk in that mindset?
Yeah.
As we're looking for community.
For sure. Yeah, Jesus, I thank you so much that we can talk about community. And I thank you for how you've designed community, Lord, to be a part of who we are, Lord. And you've been living in community since before time began with the Father and with the Spirit. And Lord, I pray that we as believers would be one with you and you and us together, Lord, that we would reflect you, Jesus. Lord, I pray that you would help us to love those around us really well. Help us to go low in humility. And Lord, I just pray that you would even show us, convict us, Lord, of maybe offenses that we're carrying in our hearts towards the communities that we're a part of. Reveal those things to us, Lord, so that we can walk in fullness of love and unity. We need you so much, Lord. We love you. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Yeah. Community is going to be the thing that carries us across the finish line. It's going to be our brothers and sisters pushing us and pulling us as things get harder, as it becomes more and more difficult to love Jesus in a world that hates everything about who he is. This is important. So I think that's a wrap. Stay tuned. 2 weeks from now, we'll have our next episode out. And yeah, we're looking forward to it. As always, thank you guys so much for joining us.